What's up, everybody? I'm Kyle Carlson, and this is the Rollback BMX Podcast, the #1 BMX podcast in the universe, according to me. This week's guest is Andy Buckworth. After an emergency surgery gone wrong, Andy spent the better part of this past year off his bike and trying to get his body fixed up. All signs point to him finally being on the mend, but this is a pretty crazy story. Don't take my word for it, listen to his. This is the Rollback BMX Podcast with Andy Buckworth. Mr. Andy Buckworth, how are you doing today?
What's up, Kyle Carlson?
Just looking handsome and being a cool guy.
Just living the California dream.
So we're out here sitting by a pool.
California dream, like I said.
Yeah, I guess that's something neither of us have earned. So we just kind of do fun shit.
Yeah, we just go and live the life, I think. But there's plenty of other pools we can sit by.
I guess we should specify that neither of us own this pool.
No, just fraud.
It's the fake California dream.
It's just fraud. Just California fraud.
California fraud is the best kind of fraud. Let's talk about your crazy injury. So about a little over a year ago, you're on a nitro tour. They ask you to do a stunt on a dirt bike. You missed a landing. you break, is it your leg and your heel or something?
Well, so what, to clarify, I was 3 shows into my stretch of this particular nitro tour, and for one reason or another, the normal person that does this stunt was absent, and we needed someone the right size, weight, just kind of the right criteria. And not anyone from Nitro, but a rider, one of the riders asked me if I would do the stunt, just, because my role in this stunt, kind of helped his role. And so somewhat reluctantly but enthusiastically, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. There's a big safety mat to land on, a big airbag. It's as safe as it possibly can be.
Worst case scenario, we should be good.
Yeah, worst case scenario, we're just going to tip over, and it's got like roll cage, and not a roll cage, but like bars to stop you from getting crushed by the bike. It was as safe as it possibly could be, except for one particular scenario that had never happened ever before.
And then it happened.
And then that particular scenario was the scenario that happened.
So you ended up broken leg and broken ankle?
So yeah, missed the landing, landed on concrete. Well, I fell off the bike, missed the landing, missed the airbag, landed on the concrete, broke my left tib fib in multiple spots, compound fracture, broke my right heel, which the calcaneus bone, that was in roughly 50 pieces, was what the surgeon said. He kind of stopped counting, but he said, upwards of 50 pieces.
Huh. So this is in Wyoming, correct?
Yes, this is Cheyenne, Wyoming, really small little town. We're on a speedway, so...
Is this one of those shows where you guys had to hold on to like the stupid bungee thing?
No, they did away with that a long time ago. We were back on the normal ramp, back on the roll-in and the kicker, and yeah, the good setup.
Okay. So this happens, did they put you in an ambulance, or what happens from there?
So I got an ambulance, and obviously morphine or phenylalanine, whatever the painkillers they give you in an ambulance, and shot me off to hospital, and I was feeling great. My Instagram story was just all over the place. I was Snapchatting and Instagramming my leg. It was facing the other way. There was blood everywhere, and just a whole lot going on. I got to hospital, and the surgeon that was on call at that particular time was the surgeon that did my operation. Now, if I wasn't doped up on whatever painkillers they'd given me, I think I would have made better decisions. But given the scenario, I was told that this was the best option to have emergency surgery as the bone was sticking out the side of my leg, and to be transported to Denver or to California or just somewhere better would have been a risk. So, you sign your life away on that dotted line and rush me off to hospital. Surgery, sorry.
So is there a scenario where you could have a compound fracture and your bone is sticking out of your leg and they'll transfer you somewhere else?
Yeah, so if the bone is not exposed, they can, wrap you up and transport you. You can wait. Like, there's been plenty of scenarios that I've seen my peers that have had compound fractures and they've had to wait and travel and etc. But obviously the risk is bone infection, and once you get a bone infection, it's really hard to get rid of. So that was the risk. That was the reason for the rushed surgery, and just to get it done that particular night.
So were there things about the hospital in Wyoming that rubbed you the wrong way? Like I'm assuming don't know a whole lot about medical stuff to where you'd be like, I just can't believe that have the tools organized this way. I'm going somewhere else. Like, what made you think this? If you weren't under the influence of all these painkillers, you would have been like, let's go somewhere else.
To be 100% honest, it was quite the opposite. Being there at that particular hospital, looking around, it was super well presented. New hospital, new beds, new ward, new room. Everything was just fresh and it looked amazing. And the service from the nurses and other doctors around was absolutely second to none. It was phenomenal. The food was great. The nurses were friendly. They were just on your beck and call. And it was a really good hospital situation except for the surgery. But at the time, I didn't know there was anything wrong.
Is it like the first ever hospital to employ a retarded surgeon? Is that kind of their deal?
I think so.
So you go in and they're putting. Is this on your heel or on your leg?
So this is my leg. The surgeon admitted that he didn't want to tackle the heel just because that's a pretty rough injury.
Was
and
he a young
one.
Doctor or anything?
No, it was actually really old.
Okay, so he goes to put the rod in your leg, correct? Take it from there.
So I'm in a hospital and they said they're going to operate. They're going to do it immediately. And I'm psyched at this point because I'm in excruciating pain and my leg's literally facing the wrong way.
So, and at what point when they're about to dig in, how long have you been in the hospital? You got hurt, you went to the hospital. Is this like a couple hours? What's our time frame?
I'm going to say like I've been at the hospital for an hour.
Okay.
Like we're going straight in. Like
okay.
it was all a big rush.
2 hours ago, you're sitting on the roll-in and now you're about to go into surgery.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
It was just like, let's get this done. Like, the risk of a bone infection, the longer we leave this out, is more of a risk. So let's just get this done as soon as possible. So we go in and, I'm unconscious, whatever, all good. I wake up in a hospital bed. My leg has like a bunch of bandages, a bunch of gauze, like just so much going on. And I remember...
And you wake up and you're thinking you're good. You wake up from surgery, it should be taken care of.
Yeah, I wake up thinking I'm dialed, My heel is still exposed and pretty painful. I've got a little morphine button and my left leg just has like insane amount of padding and gauze and just lots going on. And I remember thinking back to when I broke my right leg and just waking up in hospital and my not having that much gauze and not much bandages, and this was just so over the top. But at that time you don't think anything of it and it's all good. And then the surgeon shows up. And he says, yeah, it all went to plan. I've inserted a tibial nail. You've got 4 locking screws. Rambled off a bunch of surgery, mumbo jumbo. And I just nodded and I was like, cool, man. And I mean, it feels as good as it can for...
Probably using a lot of words you don't exactly know what they mean.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, cool.
Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up, we're good.
And I give him the old thumbs up. And this is where he says something that kind of stuck with me. And it's sat with me ever since. He said... I think I did a pretty good job for someone that only had 4 hours sleep.
Huh.
And I just thought, interesting. But at this point, I'm thinking, cool.
Well, and you don't know people, so you don't know if that's his sense of humor. You don't know.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? To where, like, there's probably great doctors that would say similar things.
Exactly. So I'm just like, And Jay Tui was actually in the other room. He broke his arm or both hands the same night. So he said, I'm going to go back and get some more rest. I'm going to go operate on your friend. And he was just like so kind of blasé about the not sleeping and just the operating on athletes and not sleeping and then operating on athletes. He was just so chill and kind of blasé about it. And that's kind of sat with me for this whole year, just thinking back on that. Like, well... maybe things wouldn't be so bad if you...
So that sticks with you, but then you move on. I'm guessing you leave the hospital in the next day or two?
Yeah, so the whole experience, this whole injury, the whole experience has just been insane. Like, it was just like anything that could go wrong went wrong. I'm now in the hospital, and like I said, the hospital was phenomenal. All the nurses were absolutely great. The food was great. They were bringing... 3, 4, 5 meals a day, however many you want, and it was an awesome situation. I was just living it up. Hospital, people from Nitro coming to visit. Travis Pastrana flew in from a rally race just to come and
How many days were you in the hospital after the surgery?
I was in there 5 days.
Now, is that standard recovery for that, or are you just milking the free meals?
That's standard recovery. They wanted to keep me in there just to monitor the infection.
But they hadn't worked on your heel.
They hadn't worked on my heel
So
yet.
the whole time you're in there, they do this operation on your leg, and your heel is just as you broke it.
Exactly how, nothing has been done with the heel. No immobilization, absolutely nothing. It's just chilling. So, yeah, like I said, I'm just hanging out in hospital, and that was kind of one of my motives to leave the hospital was, get back to California, see a specialist, and get this heel operated on before it started to knit together, before the bones started to soften and it healed in the wrong place. Let's get back to California.
So as soon as you're awake and you're thinking coherently, you're thinking, I want to go to California for the heel, even though you don't know anything's wrong with the leg yet.
Exactly.
Just because of the high-class doctors in California? Is that...
Yeah, so, a lot of the other Nitro riders have done foot and ankle breaks and shatters and all this different stuff. So they're saying, go back to California, see these particular doctors, gave me a bunch of names, and at the time, I was quite comfortable in the hospital, and it was a really good situation because, I've got 2 broken legs, essentially. I can't walk. If I go home, I'm going to be bedridden and going to be relying on other people to do literally everything for me. But so I'm in this kind of bittersweet scenario where I'm like, oh, I'm in the hospital and I can have everything looked after, but I need to get back to California and get this foot operated on.
Did they ever offer or try to operate on your heel, ankle, foot out there?
No, out there they just straight up said, look, sorry, it's too complex.
Okay.
They just said it's too complex and I don't want to tackle it.
Okay. Which probably isn't too rare based on breaking into 50 pieces when there are specialists for this sort of thing.
Exactly.
So,
and, the whole scenario in Wyoming, it was kind of bittersweet because even the mayor of Wyoming was coming and visiting in hospital, and she had even organized a private jet flight from Wyoming back to California. Now, the only day that was available was on the Saturday, and this was now the Wednesday. And like I said, at the time, I was just concerned about leaving my heel too long and, getting back to California and getting it operated on as soon as possible. So I declined the free private jet flight back to California from the mayor.
On behalf of tax-paying Americans, thank you for denying that flight.
So, I ended up just getting a United flight, I think it was United, and I now get to Denver.
I was going to say, you did United, so you had to connect.
Yeah, so
okay.
It was, no, we didn't connect. It was United straight into Ontario or something. I don't know, I was pretty out of it.
Maybe LA?
Yeah, not LA, it was...
Probably not United then. Doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't matter. Get to the airport. Jed Milden has volunteered to...
Now you're in a wheelchair.
I'm in a wheelchair, fully immobilized.
Yep.
Jed Milden offered and volunteered to escort me back to California. So he rented a car, picked me up, took me to the airport, helped me onto the plane, got me to Ontario Airport. And when I landed in Ontario Airport, it was 10 o'clock at night and the airport had shut down. Now, when they shut the Ontario Airport down, there's no elevator to get down to the ground floor. And TSA wouldn't let me go in the elevator without a TSA person escorting me down the service elevator. So I ended up having to crawl out of my wheelchair and sit on the escalator. And Jed had to, when I got to the bottom of the escalator, Jed had to pick me up so I didn't get chewed up by the bottom of the escalator.
Wow.
It was just this insane situation. And the TSA agent was perfectly fine with me climbing out of the wheelchair and sitting on the escalator just so he didn't have to escort me down the service elevator.
That seems like a big miss on their part, because it's one thing when it's you, but it's another thing when it's a 90-year-old man or woman, you know what I mean? That just literally can't walk, and you can't be like, get out and sit on this.
It was pretty crazy.
Who would have thought, though? TSA being lazy and stupid? Who would have thought?
So, Jed rents a car, and I go back to James Foster's house where I've been staying, and it's all good. I'm just, running through the motions, healing, resting, watching a bunch of movies, and just laying low.
And at this point, you're, 4 or 5 days out from the initial injury?
So this would be like, 5 days out.
Okay.
And then day 6, 7, onward. At the 2-week mark was when, as far as the surgeon was concerned, I was to start doing PT. I was to start getting minor ankle motion, getting my knee motion, and just kind of getting hips working, doing band work, and starting to get that left leg working again. So I ended up having a physiotherapist coming out to James's house and helping me through the motions. You know, we'd sit on the living room floor with a band and I would do my ankle motions and stuff. So the first couple of days of PT was all ankle, all foot and ankle on the left leg, doing absolutely nothing with the right foot because it still hadn't been operated on. And all the in between PT sessions, I was going to see surgeons and trying to get a real game plan on what's going on. So doing foot and ankle, and then on the day that I'm supposed to start moving my knee, as I'm it's only been a week and a half max, I start moving my knee back and forward, and it's absolutely excruciating. And, I'm just pushing through the pain because I can't figure out.
And you were told to start moving this.
Yeah, I was told to start moving
this. So even
if
it hurts, you're kind of like, well, it's part of the game.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, all right, old mate here, he's obviously chopped into my knee to put this rod in there, and he's operated in this area. It's going to be stiff. It's going to be sore. I just have to push through. So I keep pushing through this pain, and if anything, over 3 days, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'm telling the physiotherapist that it's getting worse, and she's just reassuring me that, it's just part of the game. You've had an operation, and they've put an incision in your knee, and just keep pushing through.
Probably trusting the doctor.
Yeah, trusting the surgeon. At this point, we thought the surgeon was all sane, and it was all good. So then I finally get this referral to see this phenomenal foot and ankle specialist down in Newport Beach. One of my friends comes and picks me up, jump in the car, we drive down there, does an x-ray of my foot and ankle, and he just says, this is way too complex for me to even do.
And he's a specialist.
And he's a foot and ankle specialist.
Wow.
He said, I'm going to refer you to this other surgeon. And while I was there with this guy, I was like, you've got the x-ray machine warmed up. What, you want to just x-ray my knee on the right side? Just tell me what's going on. And that's when he x-rayed my knee, and this is when we found the screw. I had a screw, instead of coming in from the side, I had this screw going straight in from the front through my patella tendon, which is the tendon that comes off your kneecap down into your leg, which gives you kind of the motion, the bending your knee back and forward. It allows that motion. So it's a very thick, leather strap-like tendon. And he just put a screw straight through this tendon and screwed it down onto my tibia, which is the main bone in the leg. And not only had he done that, he had left the screw sticking out about 4 or 5 threads, which is, a good 2 millimeters just sticking out of the bone. So I've got this screw head sticking through my patella tendon, and every time I was bending my knee, it was pulling the screw head through the tendon and then back.
Oh, very nice.
And then through, and then back, and through and back, and just wore this hole in my tendon and just scar tissue and just chopped my tendon to bits. And that was the pain that I was feeling when I was pushing through. So
what did he say about that?
He just said, this is insane. He goes, I wouldn't have put a screw there, but I want you to go see this Dr. Steve Tochi in Mission Viejo, and I want you to show him all these x-rays and see what we can do.
And that's the guy he wanted to work on your foot as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I make an appointment, I go see Dr. Tochi, and if anyone's in California or in America and has a foot and ankle issue, this guy, Dr. Tochi, is the best.
Yeah, but I think you don't know what you're talking about. I think he just seems like he's the best because the guy you had before was so bad. He might just be a regular ass foot doctor.
Possibly. So I show him all the x-rays, and he's just pretty mortified at what he can see in my right foot. And he just can see that the subtalar joint is absolutely destroyed. The smooth surface that it runs against the talus is just absolutely chopped to bits, and it's just absolutely shattered. It was terrible. But he has faith and says that we'll work on that, and he schedules my surgery for my foot, and at the same time scheduling my foot surgery, he just says he's going to go in, remove this screw, this miscellaneous screw that was just causing all this problem. So in the lead up to surgery, typical blood tests, CT scans, all the different things that the surgeon needs to have all the information when going in there. This is when he discovers a very minor, but enough to worry about, bone infection, which is obviously coming from my left leg where it was a compound fracture. So this is now we've got the foot to deal with, the screw to deal with, and this infection.
Now, is the bone infection, is that at all related to the botched job on the surgery, or is this just shit luck?
It's arguable.
Okay. But there is a chance there's a correlation between this and the poor job. So
a lot of surgeons out there, when having a compound fracture, will administer like a powdered version of an antibiotic to the wound or to the bone.
To essentially make damn sure.
Yeah, just to make sure there's no infection and nothing arises.
That makes sense to me.
Instead of that, he just gave me IV antibiotics rather than doing both and covering all bases. He just kind of sent it and just did the IV antibiotics. So this surgery of Dr. Tochi now, he's got 3 tasks. Put the foot back together, which he did phenomenally. Go and remove the screw, and then he cut the incisions back open and peeled the skin back and administered the powdered version of the antibiotic just to try and eliminate this bone infection. And then had me on 6 weeks.
So he did this all in one go. So he's in both your legs.
Yep.
How long were you under?
I was only under for like 5 hours.
So he's just working his ass off on you.
Yeah. So
okay.
I got dropped off at the surgery by the Wiener Schnitzel family. They dropped me off.
That's a good name for a family.
Yeah.
I come from the Carlson family. You're from the Buckworth family, and this is the Wiener Schnitzel family.
Well, to be specific, David and Cindy from the Wiener Schnitzel family.
Their last name is Wiener Schnitzel?
It's not. It's Culpepper.
It's what?
Culpepper.
That's almost as cool as Wiener Schnitzel.
I know, right?
Anyways, okay.
So David drops me off and then picks me up 5 hours later, and, it's all good. I go back to their place and I start recovering, and now that screw's gone, I've now got motion in my knee. I'm now taking the antibiotics. I'm eliminating this bone infection.
So is all he did in the leg that had the botch job on it, all he did was remove the screw and apply the antibiotic?
And then also, he had a conversation with my mother on the phone, which is not in written form. There's no evidence of this at all, except for obviously the word of my mother and then him saying that this never happened. But his whole plan was to leave a bit of a gap between the bone because he had noticed that I had a 1 centimeter bone leg length discrepancy. So growing up, I've always had 1 centimeter difference in my leg, and that's super minor, and I've dealt with it my whole life.
Well, that's fairly standard, right? That's not too crazy.
Not too crazy. That's pretty small. So his plan was to leave a gap between the bones and have it bridge the gap over time through the healing process.
Okay.
And I mean, that just sounds absolutely absurd to me. I would want the bones to be touching so it can heal as quick as possible and I can be back on the bike.
But this is the good doctor that said this.
No, this is the terrible doctor.
The idiot, okay.
This is the idiot that said this.
Okay.
So, now seeing the good doctor, him saying like, well, there is this gap between the bone, but our options are, now at this point we're 2.5 weeks out from the original surgery by the bad doctor, and he says, I don't want to go in there and remove this rod and start fresh because of the bone infection. The risks are relevant. If this bone infection gets worse, you could potentially lose the leg. You could potentially do more damage than good. I don't want to do this.
No, that's a situation where if the bone infection's bad and it spreads, they have to basically cut your leg off.
Before it spreads too far.
Okay, yeah.
So, given this new information, I opted to leave the rod in there, obviously, and just kind of wait it out. Fast forward a few weeks, my heel is coming together phenomenally. Every 2 weeks, I'm having x-rays, and Dr. Tochi is just astounded on how well it's coming together. But then we're just just anchored at a standstill on the left side on this leg that's supposed to be just healing, doing its thing. It's got a rod in there. I'm supposed to be able to walk on this thing now. We're just at a standstill. It doesn't seem like there's much bone growth at all in the right directions. I'm developing callus, but it's not actually bridging this gap. And it's this, so we're at the 4-week mark now.
So it screws out so you can bend it a little bit and stuff, but it's just not, it's not getting to where it should be.
I can now bear weight on crutches through that leg. And now when you're bearing weight through a broken bone, the weight and the load that you're putting through the bone actually stimulates bone growth.
Okay.
So I am stimulating a lot of bone growth. There's evidence of bone growing, but just not bridging the gap. I'm growing it like outways. And if you look at my leg now, you can just see I've got this like almost like Michelin Man ring around the area where the fracture was, because the bone was growing kind of outways because I'm stimulating so much growth from bearing weight and keeping the blood flowing and doing all these exercises that I was doing. I was riding the road bike, and all this was cleared by the good surgeon and doctors. You keep riding the road cycle, stationary bike, keep walking through the crutches, keep being active, get that blood flowing. The more active you stay, the faster you'll heal, etc. So I'm doing all the right things, but it's just not bridging this gap. And we're at the 4-week mark now. We've still got this gap. The bone infection is still hanging around. There's evidence of it. Surgeons still...
Not getting worse, but it's still there.
Not getting worse, but it's still there. It's getting better, but it's not at a point where we should really pull this rod out. Still running through the motions.
Now, is the plan always to take the rod out, or is the rod supposed to be there forever?
The rod's supposed to be there for the good part of the rest of your life.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Tochi wanted to pull the rod out and put a new one in, just so that he could slam those bones back together and just really make it strong. So we're now at the 6-week mark. The heel is just absolutely phenomenal. It's doing wonderfully, just coming together. We can now hardly see the cracks through the x-rays. The subtalar joint is smoothing out. There's a lot of scar tissue in there, but that's just, it's going to happen. But this leg is just not healing. We're doing CT scans and looking at, there's just this big piece at the back where it's just missing bone. And I'm developing all this bone callus forward and out the sides, but just at the back there is just not developing any kind of callus, and it has a lot to do with this gap that surgeon number one created, this gap, plus the bone infection. So it's just like a kind of a bad scenario. Fast forward a few more weeks, 2 weeks, I'm seeing Dr. Tochi every 2 weeks to get follow-up on the infection and the heel and the leg, and we're now at the 6-week mark, and he's like, yeah, okay, we're still not developing as much bone, but at this point, I'm able to bear weight. I'm walking on it, the rod is holding it all together, I've got enough bone callus to start walking, and this is where it just kind of fast forwards, and I start to really develop good, strong bone through that left leg, and the heel just starts to really come together nicely, and I'm now walking. I'm walking on through the crutches and in a boot, and then at the 8-week mark, I threw away the crutches and I was able to walk with a crazy limp, but that's where PT and the gym and physio, and we really start to speed the recovery up. And it's all going really well. It's, from what I can feel, like I'm getting better. I'm riding the road bike. I'm now doing 50 miles every other day on the road bike. I'm able to...
Are you riding a stationary bike, or are you actually going out and riding?
It started off with a stationary, and then I started around my neighborhood. 1 mile turned to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, and then by this point, 8 weeks out, I'm now doing long 50-mile rides up through the mountains. And
you're essentially an able-bodied human being.
Yes.
Many able-bodied human beings can't hop on a road bike and go 50 miles.
Exactly.
So you're getting back to you.
I'm getting back to me. I can now do everything myself. I'm independent. I can drive around. Everything's going well. I think I'm fast forwarding. So that kind of laid stagnant for a couple of weeks there. I was just doing all the right things. And about the 10 to 12 week mark, I start riding my BMX. And this is just a huge step forward for me. I can do bar spins and no-handers and 360s and flips and just like kind of the basics, mostly on the resi, just because soft landing, I'm trying to like do all the right things and not re-break my leg. I can ride my mountain bike, and just run through the motions, and it's just getting better and better each time I ride. And at one point I go see Dr. Tochi, and he's super pumped with my heel progress, and he's looking at the left leg, and he's still bummed about the left leg. He's still not satisfied. And this is when he gives me a crossroads, and he says, look, I'm really not happy with the left leg. You're still missing this big chunk of bone, and I'm still in a lot of pain, but I can do this stuff. You're missing a lot of bone at the back. Just from walking on your leg, the way that each step was, and the limp, and just like normal life things, I was actually putting a lot of wear and tear on the screws, and the rod was moving up and down within the bone a fair bit.
And that's not supposed to happen?
And it's not really supposed to happen.
Okay.
And this is all because of that gap, the non-union between the bone.
Yes.
And if the bones were touching, the rod can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I have
it's wedged in there.
It's just wedged, locked in there. Because I have this gap, and the rod is now moving back and forward, and it's twisting and turning, and there's a lot of motion. And a bone needs to be stationary, and it needs to be worked to heal, but this is getting worked, but it's not stationary. So this is the problem. So Dr. Tochi says, I would really like to pull the rod out, but you've got a choice here. We can pull the rod out, and you start fresh, and you be 4 to 6 weeks before being back on the bike again. Or you can keep doing what you're doing, and there's a 40 to 50% chance that it'll just heal up and it'll be all good.
Like eventually get back to what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And
I said a 40 to 50% chance.
Yeah.
So essentially less than half.
Yeah. So, but
Wow.
he kind of pushed in the direction that it could do it. And he said, if you're eating well, staying really active and fit, he has confidence that it can get to where I need it to be.
Still though, those odds absolutely suck.
Yeah.
40 to 50% chance, like.
But at this point, I'm thinking, like, I've just been in a wheelchair. I've been completely immobilized. I've been relying on people to bring me food, clean up the food. Like, I'm peeing in a bottle. Like, this sucks. To think to go back to having a completely broken leg again and be in a boot and on crutches and not being able to get around and not do anything again, I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna roll the dice and I'm gonna try and do it on this leg and try and heal it. And at this point, I'm doing 3 down whips. I'm doing tricks that I didn't think I'd be able to do on a broken leg, and I'm getting better. And the riding is actually better than walking. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I can do this. And then fast forward a few more weeks, and it's getting better and better. I'm now just pushing the broken leg to the back of my head, and I'm just doing my thing. I'm riding my bike, and I'm trying to progress, and walking is still excruciating, but riding is good. Riding is getting better and better, and I say, yeah, cool. I'll fly to Australia, and I'll do the Nitro Circus Live Tour. And I flew to Australia. I spoke to the people at Nitro, and I told them what I can and can't do. They gave me a super relaxed role in the show.
So how far, what month is this? How far out are we from, you get hurt late August. Are we talking?
This is January.
Okay.
No, this is actually February.
Okay.
This is February. So, we're a good few months out.
Yeah.
And I get to Australia, and I'm riding that big ramp, just with the geometry of the ramp, the speed and how mellow the takeoff is and how steep the landing and how soft the landing is, it was dialed.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't painful. The role that I had in the show, I was not in any pain.
Were you just doing a couple flips or something, or?
I mean, it sounds like I was doing more than just a relaxed roll, but I was doing flip whips, flip tucks, double flips, double fronties, and that was pretty much it. But a lot of it, like what I'm saying is it's all linear. I'm going in a straight line.
You're going straight, you roll in, you don't crank, and you land on essentially a resi landing.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So as long as I wasn't doing straight whips, threes, multiple tail whip variations, they're the things that were hurting.
Yeah.
Because I've got that rod in there, so anything linear, it was perfect. It was the twisting that was hurting. Now, things I think are going awesome, but I just start to not be able to walk very well. I'm just start to develop this insane limp. Now, what's actually happening is the weight from my body pushing down on this gap between the bone is actually closing the gap more and more. Now, this gap shouldn't have been there in the first place, but the bone infection had weakened each side of the break, so now the bone is just closing up. Each time I'm walking, riding, jumping, whatever I'm doing in life, it's just closing the gap more and more, and gets to a point where now the bones are touching. But they're not touching very well, and there's a lot of motion, a lot of twisting, a lot of bending, and this is when we look at it, and I get x-rays, and it's still broken. It's still at a non-union. There's still this big gap in behind, but it's now touching at the front, and my leg's got this little bend in it, and what had been happening is the rod that was in my leg, now they actually look at the x-rays and they measure it, it's absolutely tiny. It's like an 8mm in diameter rod.
So it had gotten smaller.
No, it's just in the very beginning. It's almost like in Cheyenne, they were like, oh, we'll just use this one.
This is what we have.
We have an 8mm one. Let's just use this one.
Yeah.
And this was all things that you would just never even look into. So the rod that was in there was actually not even big enough to hold my weight, especially even if everything went to plan all the way along. This rod is so small, or so skinny, that it wouldn't have held up in the long run anyway, because it's so thin, there's so much flex in it. So in the long run, if everything was perfect, despite the non-union, despite the gap, despite the bone infection, then the screws in the wrong place, if everything went to plan, down the track, I would have bent this rod.
You probably would have got a couple years out of it, best case scenario type of thing?
A year, best case scenario.
Okay.
So, like, all it would have taken was one big bail where I land at the cement skate park off my bike.
Which probably happens
a lot.
10 times a year at least.
Yeah. So all it was going to take, and it would have bent the rod and rebroken the leg immediately if everything went to plan. But now I've got all these different things that have gone wrong, and now I'm finding out that this rod is just super thin.
Now, you found this out in Australia.
I found this out at the end of the Nitro Circus tour.
So you were on this tour, walking was getting worse, so you went to a hospital and had him check it out again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Had you talked any more to the doctor in the United States, or?
So Dr. Tochi gave me his personal line, and I'd just been, like, conversing back and forward, and I sent him the x-rays, and he just said, you're going to need to get it operated on again. You're going to need a potential bone graft. You're going to need possibly a new rod. He goes, I would recommend a new rod. He goes, what I would do if you were here would be pull the rod out and put a 10 to 12mm rod in and use some big 5mm locking screws to lock that into place. Now, the Australian healthcare system is a lot different here. You have insurance here and you go see a specialist and you bill your insurance and the ball starts rolling pretty quickly. Now, in Australia, you have to get a referral. We have free healthcare, but you have to get a referral to see a specialist, and the specialist has like 1,000 other patients, and you see him for like 5 minutes.
And then they give you a date down the road.
They give you a date down the road because it's not life-threatening.
So is there a reason you didn't come back to the United States for this surgery?
At this point, I had because I'd had three major surgeries and a lot of visits to a specialist, I had maxed out my insurance policy that covers me all around the globe.
So had you gone back to this doctor, you'd be paying out of pocket.
I would have been
and it's probably $100,000 or something.
I'd be paying out of pocket, and it would be a lot of money.
Yeah.
So like I had spent so much of my insurance money.
And to be clear, you're very poor.
Oh, so yeah, exactly. That's it. I definitely really wanted to give a surgeon $100,000.
Yeah. So okay, so basically, money-wise, you are going to get this done in Australia through public healthcare.
Through the public healthcare system. Now, the problem I kept running into is you'd go see a doctor, and all you needed from this particular doctor was a piece of paper to go see the surgeon. You just need this one piece of paper. But you'd go see Dr. A, and he'd say, go get an x-ray and come back. So you'd go get an x-ray and come back. So he now bills Medicare twice. And then he'd say, now go get a CT scan and come back.
And it's all a hustle.
So then,
as opposed to just coming in, you get everything done in one day and you leave and have a surgery day.
Exactly. So he says, now come back. Now go to get a blood test and come back. So he now sends you to 4 different things, and you've now visited this surgeon 5 times. Not the surgeon, this doctor 5 times. He now gets to bill Medicare 5 times.
But also, in turn, this is all of a sudden a month-long process for you then.
Exactly, because you now can't make an appointment same day, next day. Each time he's taking a family day, or there's a 2-day wait, or he's now held up at the hospital. There's some reason, and then this drags on. So this drags on a month, and I'm just in limbo land, hanging out in Australia for a whole month, not getting surgery. And this is extremely frustrating, because I can go to the skate park and I can do manuals and airs and no-handers and have a good time at the skate park and feel rad on my bike. But I can't tail whip, I can't 360, I can't progress, and I can't come back to America because I'm waiting for surgery. So, this is extremely frustrating. Everybody's at work all day. In Australia, all the pros were here. Brandon Lupos was there for a little while, and that was awesome because we were riding together all the time. But then he came to ride Feast, and then he was just gone. So now I'm again on my own. Everyone's at work all day. No one wants to ride in the afternoons. It started getting dark early, and there's just not much for me to really do. And I'm in limbo waiting for surgery.
Sounds depressing.
It was pretty hard. Then, by hanging out at the skate park a bunch, I ended up meeting Justin Norris, which is professional skateboarder Saber Norris's dad, and he's actually an Olympic swimmer. He won a bunch of medals for Australia back in 2000, and in the late 90s, early 2000s, he won a bunch of Olympic medals and world championships, etc. Now, he's got a lot of connections in the medical world, just because of the Olympics and the Olympic program, and he says, go see this guy and he will get the ball rolling. So I go and see this physiotherapist, and it costs me $100, and he makes one phone call and he gets me a date to see the surgeon. He gets me a referral letter. All I have to do now is go see the doctor, get the referral letter, and then go see the surgeon on the Tuesday. And it's now Friday. So I'm I've been in limbo for a month, and now I've got a date with the surgeon, and I have this referral letter all within an hour.
No, is that because of would you say a personal relationship, or does he just deal with professional athletes, or why do you think this was so much better?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So Justin has that personal relation with him, and now he has relationship with different surgeons all over from, dealing with elite athletes.
That's awesome that they would take care of you like that. But it's kind of like when you go to the airport and they try to charge you for bags. It's I know with the click of that button, we can avoid this.
Yeah.
You don't need to do this. I know very well you could just sign this paper. You don't have to give me the runaround here.
Yeah,
it's that easy. When somebody wants to help you out, they can help you out.
So I do all these things, and I've got a text from Dr. Tochi with what he wants to do and what should be done. Now, I go get my referral letter and I go see this surgeon on the Tuesday. Now, I walk into the room, the surgeon walks in, and very presentable, cool to talk to, rad dude, rad surgeon, who just immediately just starts saying all this stuff that is so familiar from what Dr. Tochi had said. And I've had such a good experience with Tochi with putting my heel back together, and straight away I just get this awesome vibe from this guy.
Was he handsome?
I like girls, so I don't really know, but...
I do too, but sometimes dudes are handsome.
Do you think guys are handsome? That's sweet.
Not all of them. Some.
What do you think of Brandon Lupos?
Yeah, I'd do without, the weird, scooter handlebars tattoo, but he's a decent-looking guy.
Yeah, sweet. Glad you think that.
Anyway, so you're talking to this surgeon.
Talking to the surgeon, he pulls up my x-rays, the most recent x-rays, and he grabs his pinky and he puts it against the screen, and he goes, yes, that's an 8mm rod, and they're 4mm locking screws, which are way too small. And this rod is way too long. Look at it, it's all the way up in your knee joint. That's got to come out. And he's just looking at me, and just from looking at this x-ray on his computer screen, he just knew all this information that wasn't in my file. Just stuff that only I knew from, 8 months of bullshit surgeries.
Something that hopefully doctors that know their shit
would know.
Exactly. So that's essentially what you heard from the good doctor in the States. He's saying the same thing without talking to him.
Yeah, there's no connection there.
So they should be onto something. These guys know what they're talking about.
I'm like, okay, so like this dude is legit.
Cut me open.
And he goes, I'm going to pull that rod out and I'm going to put a 12 millimeter rod in with 5 millimeter locking screws, 4 of them. And if needed, we'll do a bone graft. And I'm looking at my phone with the text from Dr. Tochi saying pretty much exactly the same thing. And I'm like, all right, sweet. And he goes, let's do it next Monday.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And I just went, next Monday? Like, we've got a date? And he's like, I mean...
Like in 6 days?
And I was just absolutely shocked. I'd been in limbo for like a month and a week. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I've got a surgery date. And he's like, well, I Googled you and you've probably got like X Games and Olympic things to deal with, so we don't need to keep you bedridden for too long, shouldn't we?
And you were like, no. I write Nitro shows now. That's what I do.
And we say, cool, let's do Monday. And then we start getting closer to Monday and I get a call from the hospital. And it's like, oh, we've got no beds available because public system, there's one car crash or like a flu epidemic starts going around, just something happens and they just run out of room in the hospital. Public system. So this happens twice. Happens the Monday. They push me to Wednesday. Now happens Wednesday. And now I'm just getting quite frustrated again. But then they say 100% it's happening Monday. Be here at 5 a.m. And then 5 a.m. Monday morning, I roll up and they wheel me straight into surgery. And this is I've had a lot of surgeries and most of them been done in the States. This has never happened. They wheeled me into the actual operating theater and I look beside me and there's all the tools they're going to use and all the, there's the surgeon. He's putting his gear on and washing his hands. It was like a doctor's show. It was like I was watching an episode of House or Grey's Anatomy or something. There's all these things around and they're like discussing what they're going to do. And usually you're knocked out before you go in there.
They gas you out as soon as you go in there and then you wake up.
And you're somewhere else. But now there's just all this stuff going on. There's all these surgeons and they're washing their hands and talking about what they're going to do. And I can understand them. And I've been around this medical thing for 8 months now. And I can start hearing words they understand. And I'm like, oh, this is all pretty scary. And then they put the mask on and I woke up in the hospital 8 hours later. It was a pretty in-depth procedure. I had trouble getting the rod out. And then the position of where the first surgeon put the rod in was just really weird. So the new surgeon had to bend the rod to get it out. And then because it was now bent, it broke the screws and the screws were all wedged in there. So I've got incisions and cuts and stitches all over me now. And I wake up and I feel completely out of it because I'd been asleep for 8 hours and my leg just looked like a war zone. It was pretty crazy, but scars are cool, right?
Sure.
And then... cool, I hang out in the hospital, I sleep that night. This surgeon actually comes to my room the next day and he just goes, cool, it all went to plan. We didn't end up doing a bone graft. I put the 12 mil rod in. He shows me the screws, shows me the x-rays. He says, you should be good. Let's get you up on your feet. And I just look at him. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was in surgery yesterday and he's like, let's get you on your feet. He just helps me up, gets me on my feet and just says, here's crutches, but try not to use them. Take a step. And I was just confused, just absolutely and utterly confused on how, and I was putting so much weight on my right foot.
Just waiting for it to crumble under you.
Waiting for this to be some sort of sick joke or a dream or something. And I'm just
he takes his mask off and it's the guy from Wyoming.
Yeah.
I'm back.
And I was just so confused. And then, so using the crutches and putting a lot of weight on my right foot, I take a step. And then my second step, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. And day 2 from surgery, I can walk better than what I was walking before surgery.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is insane. This is absolutely crazy. And then I'm like, all right, what's my time frame here? He goes, I want you to start doing physio as soon as you get out of the hospital. I want you doing this, and this, like band work, knee work, strengthening, balance work. And he gave me this the surgeon gave me this full regime with the physiotherapist and said, this is what you're going to do. And I want you to take 4 mellow days of band work. And then I want you cycling on the road cycle. And I want you walking. And he said, I want 500 minimum steps a day. So I got my step counter on my phone and off we went. And he goes, if it's sore, use the crutches. If it's not sore, walk it out. So I did my 4 days of band work and just started walking. And then the surgeon called me and said, how's it doing? How's the walking doing? And I told him it's good. And he goes, cool, start riding.
Meaning riding BMX.
And that's what I said. I like my BMX. And he's like, yeah. He goes, take it easy. I know you action sports kids are crazy, but start riding. And they were his words. And
Were you like, don't call me crazy, you son of a bitch? What's the matter with you?
No, I thanked him. I was like, oh my God, thank you. So I went to the bowl and just started pumping around the bowl, doing like figure of eights and little airs. And that was like a bit of a kick in the teeth because I was thought I was going to get there and it'd just be like, the gates are open, send it.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't like that. It was like more painful to ride than what it was before surgery, but less painful to walk. And this was like, oh man, like I'm going backwards, but forwards, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, what do I do? Like, I'm pumped I can walk, but now I can't ride. Like, bittersweet. This sucks. But, you know, it just took about a week. And I rode every day, pumping the bowl, airing the quarters for a week. And then, went to the trails and filmed that edit.
So then you're good. That's where we're at right now. Your leg's good. You're bouncing back, and all the bullshit is behind you.
All the bullshit's behind me. I still have my off days. I find the more I do, the less pain I'm in. So I've been going to the
So how long ago was this actual final surgery?
I want to say probably 8 weeks ago now.
Okay.
Probably 8 weeks ago.
Okay, gotcha. Maybe like beginning of July-ish.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I can just look it up.
No, I mean, I just you're everything's on schedule though.
Yeah, so it's taking a little longer than I thought to get tricks back and really familiarize myself with riding and being in the air. But this last week has really started to speed up. So I went and filmed that edit, and in that edit, all of those tricks that I did in the edit, they are literally the first time I had done them in 10 months.
And these are double flips, front flip no-handers. You did a lot of stuff.
I did 3 double down and front flip no-hander, flip bar, flip whip. Like, not crazy stuff, but stuff that I was pretty pumped with.
Stuff that you're not doing if you're off.
Yeah.
You know, high risk, you know.
And I didn't want to film something that, you know, was really second grade, but I knew that I didn't have the capability to just really send it. So, like, I was pretty pumped with 2 weeks out of surgery, going to the trails. This is the first time I've really ridden.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Just going through and doing those tricks. And I was sore. I was real sore that night. But it was cool. I filmed that video. Then I got a hotel in the city, stayed in the city, went to the airport in the morning, and flew to America.
Are you in America for anything right now, or just hanging out?
I came over for nitro testing, to go to Woodward a bunch and ride, just to be around positive people that ride a lot. I've been riding at Barry Noble and Caroline Buchanan's house a bunch. Just they're super positive, super driven couple. That they're both absolute shredders on and off the bike. And so that's just really positive vibe for me. It was super rad. All the nitro dudes were out in California for nitro testing. We've got a new ramp, absolutely phenomenal new ramp. It's enormous, but it was so sick. Like, we've been off tour for a long time now, and we haven't seen each other, and they all flew out here. We had Jay, we had Todd, Matt Wyatt, Dusty Weigel, Brendan Schmidt, and we were all just hanging out, and we would do testing in Paris all morning, and then we'd go ride Pat Casey's house or Barry Noble's house or the trails, and it was just super rad, super positive for all of us. And then after that, Jay Tui and I and Todd Mine went up to Woodward Camp and just sent it for a week up there. And yeah, it's been absolutely phenomenal to be back on the bike, and I really missed it. Like, I came to realize that I'm a full-blown addict to riding my bike, and when you're not on your bike, you're cranky, you're tired, lethargic, just things aren't running smoothly mentally, but being on the bike really just, helps me live.
So, I know that you can't really say a whole lot negative based on them essentially being your biggest employer, but do you feel like Nitro took good care of you through all this?
So, it was pretty rad, being that I was on a dirt bike, and there was a small print clause in my insurance that it covered me on everything except for a motorized vehicle.
Now, is this insurance through Nitro? Is this something they do for you, or is this
No,
insurance?
this was a personal insurance that covers me at Dew Tour, Feast, X Games, every day, the life that I live.
Yes.
It covers me on everything except a dirt bike.
Gotcha.
And I was on a dirt bike. So here I am in the hospital. I've already had surgery, and my insurance pulls out.
Because they found out it was a dirt bike?
Because they found out it was a dirt bike. Now,
how'd they find out? Couldn't you just kind of, hey, don't look into this?
Yeah, I thought about doing that, but fraud, like real life fraud, is more than just like the normal fraud that you pull. This is like real life fraud. Yep. This is like go to jail fraud.
This isn't Buckworth fraud. This is go
to jail fraud.
Yeah, bad fraud.
So I really opted not to pull the fraud card. And so at this point, I've already had surgery, and I've got a lot of other surgeries to come. Nitro really picked up the slack.
Yeah.
They really jumped in. They helped out. They got us an insurance policy that covered the show that was cancelled because of the injury and because of other things. And without that support, I'd be out $200,000. I would be in the hole from this injury. But being that it wasn't a person from Nitro that instigated this stunt, and being that it really wasn't on their hands directly, and then stepping up to the plate and covering all of our medical.
Essentially meaning you weren't forced to do this. It wasn't a matter of you do this or you don't get paid. It was your choice.
It was a choice and a decision.
Yeah.
And if I've learned anything from this, it's just stay on my BMX bike.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nitro, there's a lot of bad press going around about Nitro, but over the years, there's been some pretty crazy stuff, but they have stuck by a lot of people and done them right throughout all the craziness.
I think like anything, they have their ups and downs with people, and I know you've had your downs with them, but I think in situations like this, it's nice to hear they come through.
Yeah, like, it's really easy to point fingers and be like, they should have been paying you. They should have done this. It's really easy to point fingers like that. And a lot of people have said this to me. But if I got hurt at X Games or Dutra or Feast or something, if I get hurt before finals, you just don't get paid.
Yeah.
You just don't get any money. You just go home and it's on you.
Yeah.
If this happened anywhere other than Nitro, I would have been out $200,000.
To be fair, if this happened anywhere other than Nitro, I don't think I'd see you hopping on a dirt bike.
True.
Who knows? Who knows?
You just never know.
Easier to say that after the fact, but it's good to hear that you're in good standings with them.
Yes.
I guess aside from all this, I'm glad that you're still living. That was a real pain in the ass. I know you don't want to backpedal on this or dwell on it, but is there any sort of like liability on that first doctor? It sounds like, to be fair, he really fucked you.
So, speaking to both the Australian surgeon and doctors along the way, physiotherapists along the way, and the California surgeon, speaking to everyone, there is this super gray area on the things that he did were a little bit left field. Now, I could 100% hire a lawyer and then get a surgeon to come argue my case, but at the end of the day, the risk is the surgeon from Wyoming just looks at the judge or looks at the lawyers and just says, that's how I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not a lawyer, and it's under my understanding from speaking to a lot of people that this medical stuff, it's a lot like BMX or skateboarding. It's like me looking at Brendan Lupos and trying to tell him that he tail whips the wrong way. And he just looks at me and says, that's how I do it. Now, if there was nothing 100% pointing at malpractice or life-threatening, then it's really hard to develop a case, because all he has to say was, oh, I didn't know he was going to ride his bike 6 weeks down the track. Oh, this is how I do it. Oh, that's all we had.
I'll bet there's some leeway as well when it's essentially emergency surgery.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he came in, we had to act fast. We could get him back together.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's definitely a case there because of the screw in a weird position. The rod being threaded in from the front of my tibia, the patella tendon being screwed.
Man, it just seems like a big miss.
Like, there's so many questions here, like a lot of question marks. And not to mention the thing that he said to my mother on the phone, like, oh, I've left this big gap. Like,
once again, like you said, it's not documented.
It's not documented, and it's his word against hers, and there's just a lot of question marks.
But on your end, you're not trying to pursue anything. You just want to move on.
I just want to put it behind me.
Yeah.
I mean,
dealt with this bullshit for long enough.
I want to put this leg behind me. I'm still in pain every day of my life. My heel hurts. My motion is terrible. My leg hurts, but I can ride my bike, and I'm getting better. I'm progressing. I have faith in the future. Nitro's given me every show this year to kind of make that money back that I am out of pocket, and I have high hopes. I've got X Games Sydney coming up. I'm super pumped. That's like the most exciting thing that I've had in a year, because growing up in Sydney, always looking up to X Games. X Games is, the biggest thing in my head action sports has, and I'm invited to go and compete in my home soil and home city, and I just want to put it all behind me.
Are you looking to do any more competing, or are you kind of... I know you're going to do the X Games Sydney thing, but I mean, where's your head at? 'Cause I mean, I just look at like... I was looking the other day at the UCI World Championships in November, and the countries with the highest current ranking, I think, can send 6 people, which is obviously the United States and Australia. And I was thinking about Australia. I'm like, okay, you got Logan, you got Lupos, Baldock, maybe Jake Wallwork. He's been in the mix. And other than them, like, I can't think of the other 2 guys. I as far as who's been competing and whatnot, and who could actually come there and bring some potential. Is that something you have any desire to get back on, or are you pretty content just doing Nitro shows and stacking cash?
I 100% want to start competing again. Competing's always been my passion. Like the Do Tour years were by far the best years of my career. It's just so fun. It really challenges you. And
you did well. You won. You've won before. You can win. I mean, that's, nothing against the other guys that ride Nitro, but for the most part, most of them can't go out and do well in these traditional park-style competitions, where you're the one dude up there that can.
I think Todd Mine has been riding really well lately, and J2E's never ridden better. Like, he's absolutely killing it right now, and I think Jay could actually do really, really, really well in Sydney. Like, I don't want to say, like, oh, Jay might win, but Jay might win.
He always stood out to me at dirt contests in the Do Tour.
Yeah.
He'd go really high and look really good.
And that's what he's doing now.
Yeah.
But mix going high and looking really good on the bike with 360 triple whips and double flips and front flip no-handers.
Is he doing that shit on like a regular box?
Yeah. Like
nice.
All the time. Like, we were at Woodward that week, and he was doing a flip whip down the step down, which is pretty crazy step down.
Which step down?
The step down in the dirt jumps. It's like there's a new... I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't been there for a few
months.
There's
a pretty crazy step down after the first hip, steps down. He's doing flip whip down the step down, triple whip on the second jump, to 360 triple on the last jump, like every single day.
Okay.
Like, he's absolutely killing it. So Jay could really do well in Australia.
I get it that you really, really, really are attracted to these guys, but let's talk about my question. Are you going to compete at all, or are you just going to make that Nitro money and drive a nice BMW?
No, I definitely want to compete. I want to get back on it. Like, that's where I've been riding every day in California, and just trying to get back to where I was before. And I would love to start doing the feast rounds and traveling to dirt contests. I mean, dirt's always where my heart's been at my whole life. Like, yeah, I did win a park Do Tour, but I've always just loved dirt. Like, dirt has been what I started riding. I started riding dirt. It just so happened that we all lived in Greenville, North Carolina, and became park riders.
Yeah.
We're just a bunch of dirt riders that became park riders. And even if you look at my park runs, all of my tricks have always been on the box jump or the spine or a hip, and my quarter pipe game has been super weak. So, I mean, traditionally...
I've seen you do a decade on a quarter pipe.
I've done a few 900s, a few decades in my life. But, yeah, I'm traditionally a dirt-specific, dirt-driven rider, and I really do want to travel and do a few more dirt contests, even the small ones that are in Europe and stuff. But, yeah, definitely love to do some feasts and be an Olympic hopeful, but...
Is your relationship with Nitro good enough to where you could sit out or maybe go do some competitions and not lose your spot?
I think at the moment now with Nitro, there's so many riders that want to be a part of it and can be a part of it.
Yeah.
I don't think they would miss me for a few shows.
But you wouldn't lose your spot. You could walk back into what you've essentially earned by doing their shows for so long.
I think, yeah, I don't want to say that's 100% the case, but if we're doing an Australian tour, it's obviously way better for their marketing to be like, oh, we're doing a show in Sydney that houses Jay Tui and Andy Buckworth, people from that city or that town, and especially when we're doing regional shows and we do one in our hometown, like it does work in their favor to have all the people, like especially when we do Melbourne shows. We got Matt Wyatt, Andrew Hayamada, we do Perth shows, there's Todd, we've got people from all over, and it does help that we do a lot of Australian tours. So I think if I did disappear for a little while and go do a few contests, I could do a few Nitro shows here and there, but 28 years old, I just want to keep riding the bike.
Yeah. No, you're 28 years old, but I think you're still kind of in your BMX prime, and I think it would be a bit of a miss if you didn't give it a shot at this stuff, Like, you have, especially if you're somewhat interested in the Olympic thing, you have one, maybe two in your career. Maybe three if you're going to get loose and push a little bit too far, but I don't think you're going to do that. Do the Nyquist
game and just ride forever and ever and ever and dominate in everything you do.
Yeah, but to be fair, he's a lot cooler of a dude than you are.
He always has been.
Yeah, and cooler than me too. So
I was going to say, I mean, he's cooler than me, he's cooler than you. I think he's cooler than most people.
Not Tom Cruise.
Not Mike Spinner either.
Yeah, well...
Tell me about your love for Mike Spinner.
He's a good guy. Known Mike a long time. He just bought a new house. It's really big.
Damn.
Yeah. Has 2 Teslas. I don't have one. Good on him.
You've got like the poor man's Tesla. What did you roll up in today?
That is a Toyota Prius.
That's sweet.
It drives itself. It's similar to a Tesla, if you're bankrupt. Something like that. All right, Mr. Buckworth, let's wrap things up here. Final question. Who's your favorite bike rider in the history of bike riding?
I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but really 100% is Dave Mirra. I had the opportunity to ride for Miraco, do a bunch of trips with Dave, and live in Greenville, North Carolina, and ride with Dave on a daily basis, and he really is my favorite bike rider ever. And, I mean, second to that, Daniel Durs has had a huge impact on my career. Just, I stayed at his house. I lived with him for 4 years and we rode together every single day, and it was like a love-hate relationship, but I really do owe a lot of my career to Daniel, and him forcing me to stay motivated and stay driven. And I guess, yeah, definitely Dave and Daniel.
You only have to pick one, and you said Dave first, so we're going with Dave.
I'm fine with that.
And I guess here's the bonus, very final question. Who is your least favorite doctor in the world?
Definitely Mr. Backstreet fucking surgeon from Wyoming.
I was going to go with Dr. Phil, but, I guess we'll get the Wyoming guy. All right, anything else you want to get off your chest? You good?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Thanks, Andy. All right, that does it for this week. Thank you for listening. Follow Andy Buckworth on Instagram @AndyBuckworth. Check out a bunch of the x-rays from this whole ordeal. And until next week, just remember, it doesn't count if you don't pull the rollback. See ya.